Well, today's show is really going to be wonderful because we are having on our show this wonderful man who is a marvelous mediator, a great attorney, a fabulous therapist, an incredible author, and he is the leader and the innovator, the chief innovator of the High Conflict Institute. And boy, we've got a lot of conflict in our country, and we have for several years. And it is time for everyone to learn the skills of ear. And so this is Bill's book, and it is wonderful. It's called Calming Upset People with Ear, EAR. It's an acronym. How statements showing empathy, attention, and respect can quickly diffuse a conflict. And that's Bill Eddy. So Bill, I want you to tell us, I've kind of did a little brief introduction, but I want people to understand a little bit more about who you are, because I think you walk on water. And tell a little bit how you got into this whole thing with conflict. Kind of tell us.
Okay, thanks, Mari. And first of all, it's great to be on your show again. So it's good to see you.
Yeah.
So after I got out of college, I went to a seminar about mediation. This is in the mid 1970s, and I thought, I love it. This is made for me. But
Right.
there weren't any jobs. So what I did is I decided to go to school and I became a, social worker. I got a master's in social work in 1982. I became a licensed clinical social worker, did a lot of child and family counseling throughout the 1980s. But I was also volunteering at a community mediation center. I just had this itching to do mediation. I liked resolving conflicts.
Yeah.
And so I saw that lawyers were starting to make money doing mediation. So I decided to go to law school. So in 1991, I graduated with my law degree and I decided to practice a little bit of law, but to also do mediation. So I set up my own law and mediation office in 1993. Yeah, so I graduated in 92. So in 93, I set that up and I found that I liked the legal thinking process, but that the same issues that I was going to court on in the morning and mediating in the afternoon, that the problem wasn't the issues, it was the personalities. And some personalities just wanted to fight about everything, and others wanted to solve problems. And so I started realizing this is kind of high conflict. The families that were high conflict in family court might have mental health issues, and that I had a background that most lawyers and judges didn't have. So what happened is that's when I started writing about high conflict personalities. We started High Conflict Institute, training professionals. And one of the key things we trained in was how to give people empathy, attention, and respect. So that's kind of how I got to this point.
Yeah, yeah. And I know it works, and so we want to get into a little bit of that, of how it works, so that people will be excited to get this book. It's short,
Yep,
but it's
hold it
great.
up.
I mean, I love the examples. It's not enough to know uh and empathy and respect and all the different issues. It's much more important to know how to do it. And that's why I always like your books, because all your books go beyond what, but gets into how. And that's what we really need to do. So let's talk a little bit about how. And then, of course, there's great examples in the book and samples. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about ear. All right. When we talk about empathy, some people can fake empathy and people know it, right?
Yeah, well, it's like they know it when they see it or when they hear it. Um, but what we tried to do is boil it down really to a technique that makes it really simple, especially in a conflict situation. So to give somebody an ear statement, you can give them some empathy, like a sentence that says, I can understand your frustration. This is a difficult situation. Or I hear how hard it is. Or I can see that this is really distressing. And so just something that starts with I can understand, I can see, I can hear shows that, we're both human beings and that we're connecting around that type of, your emotion, your experience, and that I can relate to your emotion and your experience. So you can just give a sentence or two that show empathy.
Right.
Or you can say, I'll pay attention, tell me more. I want to understand. Or you can say, I have a lot of respect for you, your work, your efforts, your commitment to solving this. So any of those tend to calm people down and make it easier to solve problems. Because when we're real upset, we can't think very clear. And a lot of today's conflicts are emotional. They're not really about issues, they're how people feel. They don't feel respected or they don't feel cared about. And the world is shrinking every day. And so we're meeting people we don't know. There's change, technology, social media, all these things. And so it is distressing. And it feels like, we're not on the same team. And yet, ear statements can help right away say, look, we're on the same team. Let's work together and see how we can solve this problem.
Right. And so many people take no time to really get into that feeling. Like, energy is catching, right?
Hmm.
So I know that if you and I in a mediation, if we can be calm
Yes.
and we can set an ambiance of calm and a smiling and and not to the point where it doesn't look like we're understanding
That's
they're upset,
sincere.
yeah, but just
Yeah.
that caring feeling
Hmm.
that it's a safe place and that we're calm, that can be contagious as well, right?
Absolutely. And that's part of the secret of ear statements is someone could be negative towards you, and rather than catching their negativity, you turn around with an ear statement and send out positive energy, and
Right.
that's just as contagious. We influence each other much more than we realize. So feelings are contagious, so put out a positive feeling.
Yes. And when we're talking about empathy, in order to be empathetic, you have to listen, right? Because if you don't listen to what their problem is, you can't really be empathetic. You can say, oh, I understand. I understand. That's not going to work. When you say, I understand what you're thinking, I understand, then people feel not legitimized or
Right.
dismissed, right? So
Yeah.
empathy is you really have to kind of open your heart to feel empathy so that that other person feels that empathy.
Yeah. And
And
in a way, you have to open your body language also so that people feel like you're receiving them, like you're nodding, you have eye contact, your hands are open instead of,
yeah,
what do you mean, buddy?
yeah, yeah,
So you're right. It's really an openness to the other person, and that's such a calming thing. It's like now we're on the same page, we're on the same team.
right. So, you can't just learn, okay, I'm going to do empathy. I'm going to pretend to be empathetic. That isn't going to work because people will see right through it. And
Yeah, in
so,
fact, let me mention right there that we say if you don't have empathy, don't say you do. If you don't have respect for the person, don't say you do. Say, I'll pay attention, tell me more,
yeah,
and then listen, just like you're saying.
yeah, or yeah, I can see, I think I see how you see it, even to say that, but clarify, because I had a mediation yesterday and the woman was saying something and I finally said, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by saying that. Tell
Yeah,
tell me what you mean. I'm not clear.
Yeah.
And so husband said, I'm not clear either, yeah, so that's it. Okay, so what about when we talk about attention? Is attention the same thing as listening?
Well, attention is listening with interest so that the person feels that. And one of the things that I like to say about ear statements is they're a step beyond what people are used to thinking of with active listening or reflective listening, where you tell somebody what you heard. You could listen and then tell them what you heard and that you're interested or and that you care or and that you're really making an effort to understand. So you give them your attention. It's not just you're there. You give them your attention. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. So the intention includes really listening intently, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
so that you can relate to their experience and say that you care about their experience or you want to help with their experience or somehow acknowledging them in a way that isn't just telling them, yeah, I heard you're upset, is I heard you're upset and I want to help or I care about you. And so people in families can use ear statements, co-workers, people in the community, etc. So it's a giving, not just listening. Yeah.
Right.
But you have to listen first. You're right.
Right. So when you do this attention, that kind of sets up a reciprocal kind of relationship too, because if I'm really giving you all my attention, it kind of models for you, for even someone who never knows how to do it, but it kind of models for them what you would appreciate back, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing about empathy. It's people don't grow up learning to give empathy unless they've received empathy. And so sometimes in difficult situations, you have somebody I think of as a high conflict person who often hasn't experienced much empathy. So they come on ready to fight. And I say, wow, I can see how upsetting this is to you. I give them my empathy, and they're like, oh, thank you. Finally somebody's understanding and paying attention and caring. And
Right,
so that's really the empathy. Really, you have to give it to receive it. I guess that's the way
right,
to say it.
right.
And so
And,
give
and
it first. You don't have to wait.
right. And I think, as mediators, one of the nice things about that, if one party really gives that attention and really gives that empathy, or if we give the empathy and help them to be empathetic to the other parties, then when it's the other party's turn, we can almost say, gee, thank you for giving that attention and all that, and just say, well, would you please do that for him or her or whatever. So
Yeah,
it kind of it gets sets up that reciprocal thing that kind of, like you said, it kind of deflects the conflict. It kind of gets them into a different, um, instead of in our amygdala, we're ready to fight, like you
right.
say, the high conflict person is ready to fight. It kind of brings them forward into their prefrontal cortex where they can start to think things through, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's very much, I kind of see it as, the amygdala is taking care of danger. And as long as you feel in danger, you can't really think that well. But if you can calm the amygdala, then you can get on to the cortex and problem solving and what do we need to do here. Now, it's interesting you're saying in mediation is helping people communicate empathy to each other. And what I found, and now in 2019, I finished 40 years of mediation. So I've retired from that and I'm just training and writing and consulting now. But what I found is that about 80% of people can do that. They can show empathy to the other person, say, oh, yeah, I can understand that that was hard for you. But about 20% of people just can't do that. And that seems to be the high conflict people who are stuck and don't really understand or feel empathy and don't give it. And so in some mediations, I've had to say, you know, both of you look at me for a couple minutes here. I know it's too hard right now to give each other some empathy because of the distress in this situation. But I want you both to know I have so much empathy for you
Yeah.
because I can
Yeah.
see how hard it is and how important it is that you feel safe and that you feel heard and that your kids know that you're communicating and solving problems. So I give them my empathy, and that often calms them down because they're butting heads trying to get empathy from each other. And
Right. Right.
sometimes some people just can't do that, at least at that time. I said in a year or two you might be able to, but right now I already can see it.
And that's the beauty of having a mediator, because I
Yeah,
mean, if you could do it yourself, you would do it. You
right,
know?
right.
And so that's the beauty of someone who has the expertise that you have, and the knowledge and understanding to be able to to give what is needed in that situation.
Yeah.
And of course, that is our job, to be empathetic to all the parties and let them know that we get it. We understand where they are, and we're there to just calm the situation and to guide them through a process that they can come up with their own agreement. But
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's the beauty, like of mediation, and you're one of the well-regarded, skilled people at showing you have so much empathy yourself that when people feel calmer, they are often able to resolve their own disputes, but they need someone else to help them stay calm and focused.
right. And
So,
they know their issues better than we do. I mean, if we're in with them
right,
for several hours, we don't know everything that went on. So really and truly, if we can get to them to the place of calm, they can be so creative because they know what's going on. They can think of things that we never would be able to think about because we don't know all the facts and all of the opportunities that are available to them. So but the mediator is really kind of like, sometimes I tell people I'm your tour guide. I'm your facilitator. I wear a lot of hats. I'm kind of your calmer down. I'm all these different things. But we are.
yeah,
But you're right. Each of us can learn these skills. It's just that when we're in the middle of it ourselves, it's sometimes hard for us to just calm ourselves down without help.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people don't always realize that your emotions are automatic because we are going to, protect ourselves from danger, like you were talking about. Yeah. So we have to take that, at least for me, and I work at this all the time, is that when I get that knee jerk reaction of somebody doing something that's wrong to either me or someone else, I mean, I feel it, but I stop, I pause, I breathe, I
Hmm.
get myself calm, and I wait to respond to where I can think it through.
Yeah,
Because it's like that old saying, speak when you're angry and you'll say the best speech you ever regret. Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, I think one of the things that you're really getting at is how we can influence our moods, but also how our moods can be automatic. And that's what I put in the first chapter about how emotions are contagious, that the
Right.
first thing that hits is your amygdala and your mirror neurons go, somebody's angry at me, so I better get angry back. Time to attack, time to fight for myself.
Right.
And so we automatically have that response, but we also have a conscious response, and we can tell ourselves, no, 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 Bill, this isn't a time to get angry. This
Right.
is a time to pause, like you said, and breathe, and then often come up with an ear statement.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we can change how we feel. People don't realize that. You can change how you feel by what you tell yourself and what you tell other people. And so you can influence somebody else's mood and behavior, especially when they're really upset and they're not thinking straight. If you can think straight, you can give them the positive empathy, attention, respect, and calm things down. Then let's look at what we can do about this. Let's
Yes.
look at our choices. And so people don't realize one person can turn the whole conversation around.
Yes, it only takes one person to totally deflect the conflict. And when you were talking about how you might say something, is in a need, not necessarily a knee-jerk reaction, but if you were to respond quickly without really pausing, that words are incredibly powerful. And if I stop and think before I, react, if I don't allow myself to react, and I think about the words I'm going to choose, it will make all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And people don't realize they have that choice.
And
And I
it's,
know this as a therapist, for that's so important. And I have a master's in psychology myself, so that really does help us in that situation. But let's get to the issue of respect. Oh my gosh, it's what the older I get, Bill, the more I realize that I would think, just it comes to me that most conflict comes from people feeling disrespected.
I think a lot of it is that it's that the we have this saying with high conflict issue, the issue's not the issue. And in so many cases, it's these more fundamental things. And treating each other with respect is, we hear so many things in national conflicts between countries. They
Yeah,
say, well, your country doesn't respect our country. And
right,
people go to war because they don't feel respected. It's like,
right.
it's free to give somebody respect. Just say, find something you respect them for, and you can avoid a war, things like that.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Yeah,
And the words, that gets back to the words when people call other nations whatever they want to call them, or they call other people, they degrade other people.
yeah,
That's the racial relationships that we have, all of the people not feeling respected as human beings for dignity.
yeah,
Everybody can be respected as a human being, even if you don't really respect what they do. You can
right.
respect them as a human being, right?
Yeah, I believe that all people are created equal, but not all behavior and not all ideas are. And so, as equal people, we can treat each other as equal people and still strongly disagree. That's okay. That's how new ideas get started, out of a disagreement. It's like, oh, I hadn't looked at it that way. Well, if you combine that with what I'm thinking, you get this new thing. Hey, maybe we can, work together and solve problems.
That
So,
reminds me of the Chinese word for conflict is made up of two symbols, the danger and the opportunity. So
right,
just what you said made me think about that, because it can be dangerous if it escalates into, a fight or a battle or a divorce or
yeah,
dissolution of partnership or killing each other. That's the danger if it escalates. And then there's
yeah,
what you're talking about, which is, oh, it's okay that we see things differently. Maybe your idea blended with my idea, we can create something brand new. That's the
yeah.
opportunity, right?
And that's what we do in mediation so much. I love, it's a win-win approach of people trying to come up with the best solutions. And that's why, some of the stress in the world today comes from people thinking, if you win, then that means I lose.
Right.
So I have to win and make you lose. In other words, if you get respect, that means I'm not getting respect. And you
Mm,
see different groups, racial issues. If we give more respect here, well, where are you taking it from? Well, we're not taking it from anywhere. We're
yeah,
making everybody be respect, respected and respect worthy and recognizing the good and bad in everybody.
right.
And that's that thinking. Unfortunately, this kind of win-lose thinking seems to be winning right now, at least on on the screens, the
Yeah, and our
TV news.
legislatures, right? And
Yeah,
Congress, that,
now you see people fighting on airplanes, and I
yeah,
don't want to see pictures like that because they inspire more behavior that's bad. That's what I learned with kids is, you show kids bad behavior and say, don't do this. Well, they're going to do it because you just taught them how to do it.
right. And the media shows all the bad things happening. And,
Right. In the
that's,
world.
the Orange County Register for a while would always have something on the front page, some good news, somebody who went and saved somebody else, or some young guys would help this, some white young gentleman would help this black woman you know who had a car accident or something, and it's feel good stuff,
Right.
show, and we need more of that. We really do.
And what's amazing, we talked about the amygdala and mirror neurons a few minutes ago, is what you see in the news influences your amygdala and your
Yeah,
mirror neurons, and so makes you happier or less happy, makes you more confrontational or calmer. And so we have so many images of bad stuff. We need things like what you just described. I'm sure you've heard of this, but the Gottmans, John and Julia
yes,
Gottman, the marriage researchers,
right,
said that a healthy, happy relationship has a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions to negative. So all couples have fights and arguments, but they have so much more positive that it outweighs it. And I'm thinking right now the news is kind of the reverse of that. It's like,
right.
here's the worst things in the world today. We found, people fell off a bridge in Thailand and died. It's like,
Mm,
that's not going to make my day. That's
right,
depressing.
right,
And then
right.
here's the one good news, how someone helped someone, like you said.
Right.
So,
Or if they
so
are going to say this is what happened in Thailand, look at all the people that came to their aid and helped them, because bad things happen. I think when they focus on murders and they focus on intentional acts,
yeah.
and how people are so bad and what they did and how they became enraged, that that's contagious, like you talk about in your book. That's what's so contagious.
And that's why we want, oops, oops, your statements to be contagious.
Right. So
I
let's
think
let's review. We've got E stands for empathy,
empathy, yeah,
A for attention,
attention.
and R for respect. So what
Yeah.
exactly do we mean by respect? I'm not sure that a lot of people really understand what that means. Um, uh,
I think it's
the-
looking for something that the person's doing that you do appreciate, that you do respect, that's a good thing. It's the good. Find the good in the person. Look for the good. It's interesting. I think it was Abraham Lincoln said, if you look for the bad in a man, you will surely find it.
yeah,
And I like to turn that around. And I think if you look for the good in a person, you'll surely find it. And so you can respect something about the other person. And when you do, it calms things and you can work together.
right, right. And to even say, I respect that you see it that way. I may see it differently,
Yeah.
but I respect that you see it that way. And I'm having a challenge with that, but I respect you as a person. I think it's really important to kind of like, like Bill Urey says, separate the person from the problem.
Yeah.
And so showing respect and kindness and courtesy, I think respect is, how do we show respect? Just let
Yeah.
me stop this for a second. Yeah, how do we show respect? We show respect with courtesy. We don't roll our eyes, right?
Right.
I mean, these,
Facial expressions, interest, hand gestures, positive.
yeah, instead of
I,
like this,
right, right.
or
And
like,
I love when people are solving a problem, like parents in a mediation, and they say, I respect your relationship with our daughter, and I just want to do this with the schedule. But by saying, I respect your relationship, I respect
yeah,
your relationship with our son. I want you to be able to do soccer with him. We just have to decide which team it's going to be. And
right.
so that kind of respect just builds the ability to solve problems, which most people can do most of the time. What we really need to do is to think positive and give ear statements to each other. And I think
Right.
that's the way even one person can make the world a better place.
Right. And I wish that, really we should send you to Congress because there's so much disrespect in the way people run for Congress or run for, some kind of a candidacy. Their candidacy is just like terrible. They have to be disrespectful of the other person instead of saying, hey, he's a nice person. But, the way we see how things should be done is different. And here's how we see it, and here's how they see it. And, a legitimate discussion or somehow so people can make a choice instead of saying he's a bad person or she's a bad person. I think that's really unfortunate. So who did you write this for?
I wrote this for everybody, but especially for non-professionals, because I've written and taught this method for 15 years to lawyers, judges, mediators, counselors, human resources, etc. And in today's world, because of the level of conflict we're seeing, everybody needs this. And I wrote it so even high school students, there's an example of high school kids putting a band together and starting to say nasty things to each other and then starting to say ear statements to each other. College students, parents, divorced parents, community and police situations, workplace, uh, employees, what they can say, bosses, what they can say. So yeah, about 28 examples of how you can have a positive ear statement in a negative situation and turn it around.
It's for
So
everybody. It
everybody,
really is for everybody because each of us, I mean, conflict is going to be inevitable, right? It doesn't have to be a combat, just because you see something differently. And I think that's the thing. We saw such terrible things in the last election. And I know your other book, we talked about your other book, which was wonderful. But I it it is for every one of us to learn to use our mindfulness and think about
yeah,
ear statements. You have to be conscious to do this. You
yeah,
have to be mindful to do it. And it's really a way of building our emotional intelligence. That's what it is. And
yeah,
I
good way to put it.
and I love it. And it's great. And I think you are wonderful. So thank you so much, Bill. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you and kind of banter ideas in a loving way.
Yep. Yeah, we go way back on doing this, so
We
that's great.
do, we do. This is something that we're both passionate about and have very similar backgrounds too.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
And so I just am excited for the next book. What is the next book that's coming?
Well, it's not written yet, but I'll
Okay.
tell you the idea that I'm working on
Yeah.
is why bullies win.
Oh.
and understanding that in families, in communities, in politics, in
Yeah.
the workplace, we're seeing a lot of bullies winning because people don't understand, and they often encourage them because they don't realize this is a bully. They think this person is a victim, but they're speaking as if they're a
Yeah.
victim. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so
Right.
how to tell
Right.
the difference, because there are real victims in the world that need assistance, but we're seeing a lot of bullies now pretending that they're victims in order to gain power over other
Yes. And
people.
a lot of it is about power. And I think that hunger for power is something that attracts people who are powerless to those bullies as well, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, I'm okay. When that book is done, we are going to get together and we're going to talk about it because we see bullies everywhere. I mean, we see bullies on the playground, we see bullies in politics, we see bullies in relationships and in the workplace. So it's a much needed book. But
Yeah.
if for those of you who are watching or listening to this, you got to get this book, Calming Upset People with Ear, which stands for empathy, attention, and respect. How statements showing empathy, attention, and respect can quickly diffuse a conflict by Bill Eddy. So um, I I love this, and I love also that it's easy reading,
Mhm.
and it's something you can go back to and underline and go, okay, I'm going to practice this, and lots of good samples. So thank you, Bill Eddy, for all of the great work that you do to make this world a better place.
Thank you so much, Mari. It's good
Thank
to work
you.
with you again.
Okay.